Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the fourth part of What If Deku Became an Analyst. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 25, But What Was Wanna Doing? Izuku walked into the gym, bracing himself for what was inside. Aizawa-san was glaring at Yagi-san, who looked like he was trying to curl in on himself. Auntie Kana stood near them, with Netsu-sensei standing on her shoulder. Kigo laid face down on the floor, and Hagakure stood there, looking completely lost. What the fuck? Young lady, you too can be a hero. Yes, I accept. It's okay mom, the Quirk doctor said I just manifested a new part of my quirk during the entrance exam. I'm alright, I promise. Toru stood in front of the mirror, admiring her appearance again. She carded her fingers through her hair, a grin on her face. Toru was wearing the UA uniform, admiring the effect One for All had on her body. She was now illuminated by a small halo of light, making her look almost ghostly. For the first time, she could see her haircut, her face, her hands. She put a sparkly bow in her hair and smiled. Toru, you're gonna be late. Momo walked into the classroom, scanning the room. A kid with purple hair and bags under his eyes had headphones on, reading a book and ignoring the rest of the world. Near the front, a girl with round cheeks was enthusiastically chatting with a girl who was transparent. In the back, Ineza was talking Shouto's ear off, who occasionally responded, while Tinya was trying to scold Ineza for being so loud. It's fine, Tinya, she said, taking a seat and putting her bag down. Class hasn't started yet. But he's disturbing fellow students' dash. Momo raised an eyebrow, gesturing to the rest of the classroom. I think you're disturbing the classroom more than he is. As kids were trickling in, Aiza sheepishly apologized. One girl with pink skin and horns shouted back, it's cool man. I am very excited to be at UA, but I am slightly concerned about the sounds of explosions in the distance. Ineza shouted, with Shouto just nodding politely. It's probably just May, Momo said. I'd be more concerned if we didn't hear any explosions. How does she make an explosion out of anything around her? Shouto just shrugged. It's just better not to question it. Something caught Shouto's attention, and Momo followed his vision to a yellow caterpillar inching its way into the classroom. Behind the podium, Uncle Aizawa emerged from his favorite sleeping bag. It took you lot 20 seconds to notice me, he said, putting a stack of gym uniforms on the podium. Put these on and get out to the field. You have 5 minutes. Momo stood up, picking a uniform and making her way to the changing rooms. Now this seemed more like UA. Hitachi was sweating. The rest of his hero career depends on him not getting 20th place in this fitness test. His teacher did say that it was a quirk assessment test, but brainwashing isn't going to make him run faster or become stronger. So it was all up to that gym membership paid via Starbucks blood money. On the bright side, he wasn't the only one feeling nervous. The invisible girl, transparent, ghostly, girl was full on panicking, with the round-cheeked girl trying to reassure her. Next to him, a girl with jacks coming out of her ears was zoning out like she was mentally calculating something. Being invisible doesn't make me more swole. The invisible cried out, leaning on the other girl. I'm doomed. Same, invisible girl. Same. Hitachi sighed to himself. If I can deal with that monstrosity of a Starbucks order, I can deal with a stupid fitness test. You too. He turned to the girl with ear jacks. Yeah. My quirk isn't gonna help me throw a ball. She nodded, gesturing with her jacks. These can barely hold a gram of weight. Jiro Kaka. He nodded back. Shinsu Hitachi. Here. She pulled out a pen from somewhere. If these uniforms have pockets, that's pretty cool, and wrote a phone number on his arm. We've gotta stick together. The pervy grape was expelled. Ineza felt bad that he was glad Mineta was gone, if only for Yaomomo's sake. She looked really uncomfortable with him staring at her. Although Yaomomo looked shaken up. I didn't expect him to actually expel someone, she muttered. He would have been expelled anyway, with the way he was looking at the girls, Shouto muttered. Aizawa-san wouldn't have let him stay for long. Well, we shouldn't dwell on it for very long. Ineza said, pulling his friends into a side hug. Tinya was out of reach. We have to focus on becoming heroes. Hagakure. Stay here for a moment. She felt dread crawling down her spine, as she stood beside the podium while her classmates walked out. She followed her teacher out of the classroom, out of the building, and into a smaller gym. Standing there was a woman with blue and pink hair, cut short around her neck, wearing a tank top and cargo pants. Perched on her shoulder was the principal of UA, Netsu himself. "Alright, we're here," Aizawa-sensei said, glaring at the rat man. "Now you're going to explain what's going on." Toru chuckled nervously. "What do you mean?" "We're not blind," her teacher said. "You start glowing between today and the entrance exam." Thankfully, she was saved from having to answer by Netsu. "When the others get here, everything will be answered." She practically hid behind her teacher when the door was kicked down. Hawks was standing there, with two feather swords, with All Might standing behind him nervously. They seemed ready to commit a murder, but faltered when they realized who was actually there. "Takamai-kun, Yagi-san, if you could please settle down," Netsu said. "Okay, but when all we get is a text that says meet in Gym Gamma ASAP, forgive us for panicking." Hawks brushed off his jacket, nearly beheading All Might when he deflated. All Might coughed into his handkerchief while Hawks floated his feathers back to his wings. "It has been a long day." "Alright, they're here," Aizawa-sensei said. "Now, can we please have an explanation?" Netsu chuckled from where he was perched on the lady's shoulder. "Do you remember what we discussed at All Might's hiring meeting?" Hawks raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? But I don't see what All Might's injury has to do with anything." All Might cleared his throat, pointedly stepping away from the younger hero. "You see, it relates back to my quirk." And so he told the same story he told Toru, about a quirk that could be passed down from user to user. "I was the 8th holder of One for All, and I have chosen young Hagakure to be the 9th holder." There was a moment of silence, like the moment before a bomb dropped, then the shouting started. "What the hell? Oh, you couldn't have told us sooner. Why a first-year student? A heads up would have been nice." "Calm down everyone," Netsu said, sipping out of a teacup that wasn't there before. The lady held a tea set, which also wasn't there before. "I approved Yagi's decision. And this is classified information," All Might said. "We needed to be sure that we could trust everyone who learned the secret. I am her teacher." Aizawa-sensei shouted. "It is my job to know this information. Who else knows about this?" Hawks asked. "Sir Nightai, as my former sidekick, Cho-san, as my doctor, a detective on the force, and young Midoriya." "What? How?" "He was the first person I offered One for All to. He turned it down, but offered to help me look for another candidate." Aizawa-sensei and Hawks started shouting again. "So, Midoriya was the one who picked me to receive One for All?" Toru asked. "He is," Netsu said, and the lady offered her a cup of tea, which she took. "He is one of the top analysts in the country, if not the world, and we trust his judgment. If he says that you are the right candidate, then you are the right candidate." Toru scooched closer to them, looking over at the three adults still arguing. "I don't know if there would be this much arguing if I was. Do not mistake their concern for your safety as thinking you are unworthy." The lady snorted. "What Netsu's saying is that they're arguing because they want to make sure you're safe. I'm sure they all agree that you deserve One for All." "Thanks, ER-. Tsutsumi Kana," she said with a smile. "Netsu's secretary. I was introduced during orientation. Every student in Class 1A will receive a packet with information that was presented during orientation," Netsu said. "It's very important, but I understand why Aizawa-kun skips it. Even all the staff agree that it's pretty boring," Tsutsumi said with a wink. She turned her attention to the other adults when they stopped arguing. Aizawa-sensei was glaring at All Might, and Hawks was laying face down on the floor. The doors to the gym opened, and Toru looked over. A kid about her age was standing there, with bushy green hair and freckles. He was wearing the UA uniform and was wearing a pair of glasses, lugging a dorky yellow backpack. "What the fuck? Ah, Deku-kun. Please come in," Netsu said. "Would you like a cup of tea? It's chamomile." "Sure," Midoriya took a cup, before wandering over to Hawks and nudging him with his foot. "Kigo. Kigo." The hero just mumbled something. "Kigo, I will kick you." "Let him be, Izuku," Tsutsune said. "You already bit him." Toru felt a horrible sense of dread. I think we should focus on the matter at hand, Netsu said. We need an analysis on young Hagakure. Midoriya pulled out a pen and paper from seemingly nowhere, already flipping to a page. Where is my here it is. Hagakure Toru, Quirk's invisibility, and one for all. Hagakure, how are you feeling? Any pain, strange physical sensations, appetite changes, weird mood swings? She shook her head, mind reeling. No. Just this. Good. Midoriya was writing in his notebook, scooting closer and closer to her. So, this immediately tells that your original quirk wasn't just invisibility, it was the ability to refract light through your body. It just wasn't that strong, so the only effect it had was turning your body invisible. However, one for all strengthened your quirk. How? I thought it was just a strength enhancement quirk, Toru said. It's why I'm a little confused about this. Midoriya shook his head. One for all is a stockpile quirk that enhances the quirk of the holder. All Might's body was only enhanced because he was quirkless, so the quirk had no other option. All Might sputtered behind him, but Midoriya barreled on. When looking at other users, such as Nananyan, and Lariat, it's clear that it's enhancing their quirks. My boy, that's how did you dash? 2 days of intense research and no sleep. Midoriya responded with a grin. That's when you bit Kigo, right? Tsutsumi asked. He nodded. I thought he was a clown. He turned back to Toru. Hallucinations due to sleep deprivation start at the 72-hour mark. Learn from my mistakes, don't do that. She nodded. Now, I have a couple of things I want to test out, which is why we're in the gym. Can you try refracting light again? Izuku grinned, flipping through his notes as Auntie Kana drove them home. Kigo was a terrible driver. They had figured out that Hagakure was able to turn invisible again at will, and she was able to control the light going through her, giving her the ability to create flashes of light through her body. She could redirect beams of light and intensify sunlight and other existing sources of light, and can use that energy to heat things up. He had a costume originally designed for her. Netsu sent him some of the costumes to redesign for students, but with this new idea, his brain was running wild. He had already texted May the details, and they were going to make it in the lab tomorrow before 1AS pre-test. It would be a bit of a crunch time, but completely doable. Tomorrow was going to be amazing. Chapter 26, Pre-tests. Pony giggled as her classmate complained incessantly. She could tell that Tokichi was getting annoyed, but Honuki found it just as funny as she did. How come 1A gets to do things while we have to do this? Because they took the quirk assessment test yesterday, Vlad King sighed, already looking done with their class. But why? Because Aizawa is crazy, their teacher said. Now, please step up and stop asking questions. Pony and Honuki shared a glance, giving each other a nod. They were definitely grilling their friends about what they did today. She may have picked up some of her friends' competitiveness. Oops. Thankfully, the second day was calmer than the first. It was a usual class schedule, with his teachers just going over expectations, syllabi, and icebreakers. Which was just fine with Hitachi. Yesterday was terrifying enough, thank you. It wasn't a complete clusterfuck though. He thinks he made some friends. They stuck around the second day, despite his personality. Actually, he and Jiro were pretty similar, which was kinda cool. Anyways, Hagakure was talking about this support student she met yesterday, who agreed to meet them at lunch. Hitachi didn't think that much of it until he spotted the table. There was a girl with pink curls and goggles pushed up onto her forehead, excitedly chattering instead of eating. Next to her was a girl who was more spider-like, listening and occasionally pitching in. And across from them both was a boy with green curls and freckles that haunted his nightmares. Rabbit. He thought he escaped his days as a Starbucks barista, and yet here is his most terrifying regular. Now, Rabbit wasn't rude or particularly chatty. Hell, he even left fantastic tips. They didn't know his name, he always signed with a little rabbit shape, but that wasn't unusual either. Plenty of customers signed with a nickname. No, the truly terrifying part was the order. If Hitachi was being generous, he would call it a murder weapon. If he wasn't, he'd call it a violation of the Geneva Convention. Just when he thought it couldn't get worse, Hagakure called out, "Hi Midoriya-kun." And Rabbit looked up. "Hi Hagakure." Rabbit responded with a wave. May muttered, turning around. But before he could escape, Jiro grabbed his arm and dragged him to his doom. Hagakure had taken a seat next to the kid who could probably fight God, so the rest of them sat at a table that Yurika had dragged over. Introductions were made while Hitachi shoveled food into his mouth so that he didn't have to talk. He learned that the crazy lady was Hatsum, the spider girl was Tisseranda, although she was French so she preferred to be called Annabelle, or Anna for short, and that Rabbit's real name was Midoriya. "Alright, why are you so afraid of Midoriya?" Jiro asked. "Do you know him or something?" He shrugged through a mouthful of food, while Midoriya spoke up for him. "Kind of. On my morning jog, I pick up Starbucks before I go to the post office. He was usually working when I came in." "Yeah, we're all scared of you," Hitachi responded. "It's not just me." "But why?" He just gave Midoriya a deadpan glare. Anyone whose daily Starbucks order is a legal murder weapon should be feared. At the end of lunch, when he followed his friends back to class, Hitachi had a horrible moment of realization. He was now friends with Midoriya. Tora chatted with Yurika and Jiro, holding her costume case close to her chest as they entered the locker room. They were taking some sort of pre-test, but All Might didn't tell them much more besides that. "Oh." Yaomomo called out, pulling out a note. "A couple of my friends in the support course made some changes to our costumes. To the tune of the other girls chanting 'Show us.'" Yaomomo pulled out her costume. It was pretty much the same as what she ordered, except that it came with a cape and a headset. According to the note, the cape was made of fireproof materials and the headset was a quickly modified baby of Hatsum's to look up chemistry things for her quirk. The only addition that Hatsum and Midoriya made to Ajui's costume was the addition of some sort of neck pillow thing to automatically regulate her body temperature. To Jiro's costume, they added padding to her jacket and pants, as well as boots she could plug her jacks into to amplify vibrations. For Yurika's costume they actually removed what used to be heels on her boots, and thickened up the padding of her bodysuit so that her costume provided actual protection. Midoriya added a full 4-page rant about why fighting in heels is a stupid idea. They had removed the heels from Yaomomo's boots too. Tora nervously opened her case, eyes wide when she was met with a costume she didn't remember ordering. Jaw dropped, she pulled out the letter attached. "Me and May rushed to get this done yesterday, but thankfully the Hatsums let us use their fiber spinner. I won't bore you with the details. Your old costume was a literal crime, it had no protection and was showing way too much skin. I don't think She's Invisible will fly with the Hero Commission. So here's the new one. It's a full bodysuit made out of your hair, so it's still invisible and padded. The parts that are visible can turn invisible with you, even the belt and sunglasses. The sunglasses are meant to protect your eyes from your own flashes, while the invisible sections of the gloves are meant to act as a sort of magnifying glass. Deku and Hatsum Inc. That is sick," Jiro said over her shoulder. "Try it on, try it on." Yurika cheered, shoving her into a changing stall. With a nervous giggle, she let her friends close the stall behind her. She changed as quickly as possible, stepping out to let her friends judge her. Most of the bodysuit was invisible as described, but there were a few opaque spots. One was a striped pastel blue and pink sleeveless crop top area, with a cutout of a star on the front and back. The second were shorts that ended just above her knees, with the front being blue and the back being pink. Her boots were also opaque, going up to her calves with gold accents around a pink star shape. Her gloves were the most similar to her old costume, although now they had cutouts like the ones on her chest, along with padding on the knuckles that she was a little concerned about. Her belt was gold with a pink buckle, and it felt like it was made of some sort of rubber. Finally were the sunglasses, tinted dark gray and shaped like an anime character's. "You look so good. Wow. That's pretty cool. You look great, Kuro." Tora blushed as Jiro looked back at the note she had somehow pulled out of Toru's case. "It says your costume should turn invisible with you. To the chance of try it. Try it. Try it." Tora stepped in front of the full-body mirror and pictured a glass of clear water, like she practiced yesterday. In front of her eyes, she disappeared, as if there was no one standing there at all. She let go of the mental picture, turning to face her clapping classmates with a bashful smile. That was until Yaomomo pulled out her phone and gasped. "We need to go before we're late." Izuku bounced up and down excitedly, a little recorder in his hands. Nezu was perched on his shoulder, and May was bouncing next to him. Support support students don't have the same extra period that the hero students do, unless you're Nezu's student, so Mei got permission from her parents to stay and watch her babies in action. The pre-test for 1A was also a pre-test for Izuku. Nezu has always gotten Izuku's analyses in their final polished form, and he wants to see the raw unfiltered process. Yagi and Kigo were explaining the rules and dividing up the teams while Izuku opened his laptop, making sure that all his extra cameras were connected and working. Of course they were all being manned and guarded by the 4th Raccoon Battalion. Me and All Might will be on the ground, while Nezu will be keeping an eye on you from here, his brother said, gesturing with his wings. Now, Team J, you have 5 minutes to prepare your defense. Team A, you have 5 minutes to memorize the layout of the building and strategize. Yagi started the cheer. Go beyond dash. Plus ultra. Team J vs Team A match, voice recording snippet. Ineza and Eureka had the right idea, using both of their strengths to their advantage. Eureka floated the bomb up above the building, and they decided to stay up there and guard it. It's a good strategy, since Ineza's quirk is ideal to protect the bomb while it's in the air. It looks like Shinsu and Kirishima have a plan though. It seems that Shinsu is going to use his quirk on Ineza in order to get him to bring the bomb back down while Kirishima fends off Eureka. Given the circumstances, it seems like the best plan they can get. Kirishima's quirk is close range though and isn't going to help in a fight against Eureka, so hopefully his combat skills can help him here. So you're still okay with my quirk? Hitachi deadpanned, following his classmates back to the viewing area. Of course. Ineza cheered, still extremely loud. A hero should do whatever they can to save people. Especially with the least amount of violence. Yeah, it was pretty manly, Kirishima said. And it was smart, Eureka piped up. I probably wouldn't have thought about asking Ineza to bring the bomb back down. You guys were manly too. Kirishima said again. Floating the bomb was smart. I definitely wouldn't have thought of that. Don't put yourself down. She responded, bouncing over. You'll be a great hero too. Yeah. I'll focus on my strengths and leave the thinking to someone who is better at that sort of thing. Ineza interjected this time. Teamwork is an important part of heroics. But the most important part of being a hero is having a passionate spirit. One of his friends, Yaoyorozu, if Hitachi remembered correctly, smiled and said passionate spirits but cool heads. That is correct, thank you Yaoyorozu. I understand your passion, but this is an indoor space and I have to ask you to quiet down. Hitachi ignored whatever argument was happening in the corner when Midoriya bounced up to him, getting a little too close for comfort. Shinsu, your quirk is so cool. How far is its limit? Can you control multiple people at once? What sort of commands can you use? How does it feel on your end? Can you use it on me? Yaoyorozu came over to gently pull him away from Hitachi, which he was very grateful for. Izuku, maybe you should slow down and breathe for a bit. Well, I have used my quirk on you before, he said, before realizing that he just admitted to illegal quirk use. Really? Midoriya asked, looking confused but still excited, and not scared, thankfully. When? No digging his way out of this now. Sometimes you would come in looking even more tired than usual, so when you ordered, I would use my quirk on you, give you an empty cup, and order you to leave. Oh, so that's what was happening. By the time I snap out of it I'm usually on my way to the post office, so I thought I just blacked out ordering and drinking my Starbucks. Hitachi looked up to see something wiggling in Midoriya's hair, and out of the corner of his eye, he could see Hawk-sensei flying up to one of the cameras displayed on Midoriya's laptop. Midoriya Izuku. He could almost see the moment Midoriya's soul left his poor body. Kigo, it's not what you think. He said, plucking the red feather from his hair and running back over to the laptop. Mei, has he been drinking coffee? Hatsum, who had procured a bowl of popcorn from who knows where, completely ratted her friend out. Yep. He orders Starbucks every day on his morning jog. Mei. His teacher started screeching. You know you're not allowed to grounded. You are so grounded. Grounded for forever. Midoriya groaned. You don't even have the authority to do that. I so do. As both a pro hero and your older brother. So you're double grounded. Principal Nezu, who was still perched on Midoriya's shoulder, patted his student on the head. I do have to agree with Takamai-kun. The amount of caffeine you ingest is very unhealthy. See. Triple grounded. As he slumped onto the monitor with a groan, Hitachi felt a little bad for him. But only a little. Anything that stopped Midoriya from ingesting those war crimes was a good thing. Team G vs Team D match, voice recording snippet. Azui and Ajiro look like they're using sign language to plan, which is smart. And a nice surprise. I can't see what they're planning from here though. I think Yaomomo and Siro are making traps around the bomb. Siro is leaving tape traps around the building and in doorways, and Yaomomo seems to be making her traps centered solely around the bomb. She's making parts, it looks like she's building something. Handsome, I added the blueprints of my babies to the Yao headset. She's definitely building one of May's inventions. Then hold on, is that a robot shark? May, you see that too, right? That's definitely a robot shark, right? Handsome, oh yeah. That's Felix the shark. How do you plan around a robot shark? It's not looking great for Azui and Ajiro. Team H vs Team E match, voice recording snippet. Tinya, please stop planning so loudly, it is physically killing me. I'm pretty sure it's not helping Jiro either. This is the first match that the defensive team has thought to spy on the offensive team. Satu is on the roof, and it's not the most ideal hiding place seeing as it's broad daylight and the shadow would be easily visible. It's not a bad spot either, people rarely look up. Tinya is basically handing the defensive team on a silver platter. The defending team's strategy is solid too. Tokoyami is on the bottom floor, in a room with no windows and one door, guarding the bomb. His quirk is extremely powerful, especially in complete darkness. It's almost a guaranteed win for Satu and Tokoyami. Team I vs Team F match, voice recording snippet. There isn't a single brain cell between Kaminari and Ashido. They don't even have a plan, they're just gonna guard the bomb and wing it. Which is a terrible strategy. They also have the same problem that Aitsa did. They are very loud. Which is a problem when Shaoji essentially has super hearing. Where is Captain Mickey going? Oh. He's going to talk to Kauta. I forgot that Kauta's quirk is that he can talk to animals. Yeah, it's over for Kaminari and Ashido. I trained the 4th Raccoon Battalion well. Toru held her breath, slowly creeping through the building. The entire building was frozen solid, so she covered her mouth with her hands so that her breath didn't give her away in the cold air. She knew which floor the bomb was being hidden on. She managed to catch a glimpse of it, basically using her invisible hand as a telescope, which was pretty cool, if she did say so herself. So she's going to tag the bomb while Ineza distracted Aoyama and Todoroki. Apparently Ineza and Todoroki were friends. And they were also friends with Midoriya. So Ineza was the most qualified distraction, other than his quirk. Toru was fully invisible, making sure she stayed cautious as she crept to the 2nd floor. She could hear Ineza fighting the other team on the roof, but she didn't want to risk it if one of them decided to double back. She looked around, scanning the room with the bomb quickly. Before she could double guess herself, she grinned, releasing her invisibility and sprinting to the bomb. She slapped it so hard that she accidentally dented it. Team C has won. All Might's voice boomed over the intercom. She had a wide smile on her face as she threw open the window. Ineza floated down to where she was leaning out. Toru jumped out, feeling the wind catch her and land her gently on the ground. We did it. Chapter 27, Media Shitstorm. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Hitachi glared at the crowd of reporters around the main gates, standing a few meters away with his friends. Alright, what's up with the media shitstorm? Well, news of All Might and Hawk's teaching at UA was bound to make its way to the media, Jiro muttered. Hey guys, what's up dash? Oh. Kirishima ran up to them, stopping next to them while they were observing the swarm. You think Aizawa-sensei will excuse us for being late? Hagakure asked, tapping her chin. Don't worry, I got this. Kirishima stepped forwards, cupping his mouth with his hands. What startled all of them was when he shouted, it sounded like it was coming from the other side of the reporters. Look, it's All Might. The reporters started running, trying to chase the scoop. Carpeing the DM, Hitachi bolted through the gates, his friends and Kirishima following them. That was pretty sick, Jiro said, once they were safely on campus and starting to walk to class. Thanks. Kirishima said gratefully. I had a ventriloquism phase in middle school. Can you teach me how to do that? Hagakure asked. It would be super useful. Me too, Hitachi muttered. Stealth heroes. Hagakure cheered, holding up her hand for a fist bump, which Hitachi returned. Yeah, I can totally do that. Kirishima said, with a wide grin. Why was Hitachi's face going red? Here, let me add you to the group chat. Jiro whipped out her phone from wherever she stores it, he's half convinced it's a secondary quirk, and started to enter Kirishima's number. A little while later, Hitachi pulled out his phone from where it buzzed in his pocket. Guitar Hero Hypnotoad, 8:14 AM. Gay ass motherfucker. Izuku, what the fuck? Izuku chugged the second monster can. The first was already empty. Kigo banned me from coffee. He never said anything about energy drinks. Tinya started arm chopping. Energy drinks are extremely bad for your health. Isn't Monster banned in India? Momo pointed out, sipping her thermos of tea. It's not in Japan though. You know, I think we were worried about the wrong hero killing you, Jozu said. We were all afraid of Endeavor turning you into a crisp, but I'm pretty sure Hawks is gonna get you first. I'm not afraid of being perma-grounded, Izuku muttered, taking another sip of his drink. I can get anything I need through the raccoon army. I think the power is getting to his head. Shouto turned to Mei, who was watching Izuku furiously while scribbling things down. Are you going to do anything? Nope, I'm getting extra credit from Netsu if I record Broccoli-chan's slow descent into madness and turn it into a research paper. A slow descent? Izuku muttered. Damn, I gotta hurry up. Yeah, you say that like he isn't already crazy. Okay, I'm changing the subject. Tinya shouted. We elected our class representatives today. I was elected as class representative and Momo was elected vice representative. Actually, Ineza was elected class rep, but he wanted to give it to Tinya, and the rest of the class went along with it, Shouto said. It was a very heartfelt speech, Momo said. I think I saw Kirishima crying in the back. I never intended to make anyone cry, but I'm glad my words touched people's hearts. Ineza shouted. How about 1B? Momo asked, trying to diverge from the shouting. Did either of you get elected? Oh no, you know none of us are responsible enough to be elected, Jozu said. Honestly, I wasn't paying too much attention, but the girl who's been raining Monoma's shit in his class rep. Tokage nodded. Honestly the test for rep is if they can deal with Monoma. What about 1H? Pony asked. Yeah, everyone knows the support students are the crazy ones, Jozu muttered. You're not wrong, Mei said. Majima-sensei pulled me and Broccoli-chan out of the running for representatives. To be fair, the first thing we said when we entered his classroom was we'll be a baby-making machine, Izuku responded. I don't blame him. I've got to agree with Power Loader on this one, Jozu said. Between the Raccoon Army surveillance state and the trail of explosions, neither of you are fit to be in any position of authority. Izuku was about to rebut about how he was not building a Raccoon Army surveillance state, that was the Crow surveillance state actually, thank you very much, when a screeching alarm went off. Izuku grabbed his caffeine vessel and his laptop. Mei picked him up, running to the side of the cafeteria opposite of the herd of people, while Izuku chugged the rest of the can and clutched his laptop to his chest. He and Mei watched out the cafeteria window as the media swarmed the campus. The reporters shouldn't have been able to get in, Izuku muttered, throwing the empty can into the garbage bin. Mei set him down as Izuku slipped his laptop into Mei's bag. I've got an idea, but I need you to distract the media. She held out her arm for a fist bump, which he gladly gave her. Leave it to me, Broccoli-chan. Are you an aspiring hero, who needs support gear but knows that most support companies are cheap and don't offer you high-quality equipment? Mei forced herself in front of the cameras, posing for them. Are you an investor, disappointed in the current options out on the market and interested in fresh ideas? Well, say no more. At Hatsum Inc., we believe in providing the top-of-the-line support gear, at fair prices without compromising the integrity of your vision. With fresh ideas, we can give you the support gear you need to make your heroic dreams come true. Find the final piece of your costume and your career at Hatsum Inc. The reporters started to boo her, shouting for All Might and Hawks as the teachers started to show them out. Undeterred, she continued to shout. If you want to get top-of-the-line support equipment, call 555 HAT SUME. That's 555 HATSUME. Make your heroic dreams come true at Hatsum Inc. Majima-sensei sighed, walking over to where she was still posing. What are you doing? And where is Midoriya? You two are glued at the hip. She grinned. Distracting you. Where is Midoriya? Hatsum just made jazz hands. Izuku knelt down, wedged between a tree and the gates to UA. He took in the wreckage with a frown, noting that the damage was relatively clean with no traces of fire or cutting. However, it does look like it was disintegrated. The edges of the gate were sloped and dusty, and there was dust laying around. If a rabbit journalist had a disintegration quirk, they would have gotten in long before now. Someone let the reporters in, but for what purpose? He held out his hand, dragging his fingers through the dust. It was fine, with some of it sticking to his fingertips. He stuck out his tongue, noting that the security cameras around the gate was an unfortunate casualty as he raised his hand. Please do not eat the dust, Dekuro-kun. Izuku looked up to see Nezu walking towards him, with Auntie Kana trailing behind him. Sensei, someone let the reporters in. It would seem so. When we did a sweep of the teacher's lounge, nothing was out of place. We'll do a more thorough search later, once the reporters are off campus, Auntie Kana said. But everyone was more concerned with the vultures. We should take this conversation into my office, Nezu said, hopping onto Izuku's shoulder. His teacher has done that often enough that he shifted his balance instinctively, following Auntie Kana back to the main building. It didn't escape his notice that she took them through the forest so they wouldn't be spotted by the reporters. Izuku, why is Majima calling me? Nezu slid a cup of tea to Izuku, who took it gratefully. I was planning on going over your notes from yesterday and looking through what you caught and what you missed, but due to today's events, we'll be switching your lessons around. Pull out your laptop. I'll be teaching you how to use BNHA security systems. Nezu. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Detective Tsukachi. I have an update on the case. Chapter 28 was just an interlude. Chapter 29, some new, some familiar faces. You can't afford to use your time up before school, Nezu said, taking another sip of his tea. Especially with the security breath yesterday. He laid a paw on the hero's knee. Trust in other heroes to take care of petty crime. Your students are the ones who need you. Yagi sighed, staring despondently down at his cup of tea. I know. It's just that All Might is the hero who is there. If he sees a crime, he steps in to help. And that has served you well in the past, but your time is limited now. You have to prioritize your students. Nezu sat back, taking another long sip of his tea. Well, now that we have the time, why don't we go over the lecture you missed last week? The door opened suddenly, revealing an out-of-breath Tsutsumi, panting and clutching her laptop to her chest. Nezu, sir, we've lost connection with the USJ. One of the best things about his brother is that he has little brother privileges for piggyback rides. The Hawks taxi doesn't have to deal with traffic or tolls. Today's lesson was analysis of disaster and rescue scenarios. It was an area that Izuku was unfortunately lacking in. He does a little bit of that when he does analysis of rescue heroes, but most of his work skews towards villain analyses and takedown strategies. It was important work, but he can't neglect disaster scenarios, and he had to remember to incorporate rescue tips into his general hero analyses. Kigo and 13 were going to be at the USJ early, while Izawa would be waiting on the main campus for his students, probably napping. Yagi and Nezu were supposed to be there too, but when they landed the two teachers were absent. Where's Yagi-san and Nezu-sensei? Izuku asked, jumping off Kigo's back and making him stumble with a muttered shit. All Might hasn't arrived yet, so Nezu is waiting for him on the main campus. You know where you're going, kiddo? Kigo asked, ruffling his hair. Izuku swatted him off. Yeah, Nezu-sensei showed me the blueprints while we were going over BNHA security systems. The two heroes looked at each other worriedly. What? The staff meeting yesterday was about plans of emergency in the event of a villain attack. Kigo started to play with the feathers on his wings nervously. While a plan was put in place for the main campus, the biggest concern was the field trip here. And you were banking on having All Might here. I can certainly take on any villains that may attack, Kigo declared, trying to reassure them and himself. But I don't want to risk any students getting hurt. I'd certainly appreciate the backup. Don't worry, Kigo, I'll stay safely in the console room. You should head there now, 13 said. Get comfortable down there. Izuku hiked up his bag with a smile. Don't worry guys, I'm sure it'll be fine. Kyuka was an observant person out of necessity. She can't turn her advanced hearing off, but she's learned how to tune out meaningless chatter and only hear the important shit. There's always an adjustment period though. It takes about a week for her to learn what to tune out. On the bus to the field trip, she hears the arguing between Kirishima, Kaminari, and Ashido about the best Pokemon. She hears the muffled conversation between Hagakure and Yurika about what kinds of hero they wanna be. She hears the very loud conversation between Ineza, Aiza, and Aoyama, with Todoroki interjecting snarky comments and Yaomomo holding in giggles. But most importantly, she hears a one-sided phone call between Aizawa-sensei and their principal, based on the muttered rat bastard, about All Might and a possible villain attack. When the call was finished, she looked over at Xiaoji. He gave her a small nod, he heard it too. So they were the only ones to feel a sense of dread when they entered the USJ. And they were the only ones to recognize the danger when a portal opened in the plaza. Kigo bit back a curse as he watched the portal form in the plaza. Get back. Those are villains. Follow 13 and get out. Aizawa shouted from behind him. Hawks, I'll cover you. If you're sure you can keep up, old man. If you're sure you'll be able to take on the whole crowd at once. Speak for yourself, bird brain. I know I can. Izuku held his breath, eyes wide as he watched the screens. His hands shook as his eyes were glued to one screen in particular. He vaguely registered at the back of his mind a misty villain warping villains into the complex, scattering his classmates, but his eyes were glued to the woman that stepped out next to the villain covered in hands. She was wearing a dark purple kimono, with plated armor where the obi would be. Notably, she had 4 arms, and 2 spikes behind the back of her ears. She was tall and slender, with a simple mask covering the bottom half of her face. Notably, her hair was pulled up in a half up, half down bun with chopsticks stuck in the bun, with her hair going down to her mid-back. Even with the mask covering the bottom of her face, he could recognize her. The signature dark green Midoriya hair, the hairstyle. His brain was connecting the dots, but he didn't want to acknowledge the conclusion he was reaching. He didn't know how long he stood there, shaking, when he heard the door open. He whirled around, pulling the knife out from his pocket. It's just me. Aoyama stood in the door, his hands up. When Izuku put the knife down, he lowered his hands. I didn't know you'd be here, monsieur. Me and Nezu-sensei were supposed to watch from here for my lesson on integrating disaster scenarios into my analyses, Izuku sighed, running his free hand through his hair. You are Nezu's student though, we. Aoyama said. Do you know how to use the systems for this place? That's right. Nezu taught him how to use the security systems and auto setups. He can use that to guide the others to the exit. Their signal to the outside world might have been cut off, but if Aiza escapes outside, he can run and get help. He cracked his knuckles, pushing his feelings aside like he did when he saved Bakuga from the sludge villain. Emotions could come later, his priority was getting his classmates to safety. Aoyama, guard the door, Izuku said, pulling up the console. I'll keep everyone safe. In the fire zone, Ajiro covered his mouth with his tail, following the trail through the maze of fire. He swears that the paths weren't there before, opening before his eyes, but he's not going to question not having to fight the villains. In the mountain zone, Momo, Jiro, and Kaminari hid under a camouflage blanket, watching as a landslide triggered from seemingly nowhere swept the villains away. In the landslide zone, Xiaoto watched as the villain sunk into the mud, being trapped by something that looked like quicksand. He didn't question it too much, it would make it easier for him to question them without overusing his quirk. In the ruins zone, Ineza lifted Kirishima above the winds using his quirk, noticing that the buildings shook and dislodging the villains. Despite the fact that he hasn't seen him, he has no doubt that his friend Midoriya was helping them. In the downpour zone, Tokoyami and Kauta held hands as they ran through the dome, following the trail made by the absence of rain. Kauta noticed that around them, the rain increased so much that it was practically pummeling the villains. In the flood zone, while Tsuyu, Shinsu, and Toru were planning a route of escape atop the ship, they felt it shake around them, as the water started draining from the area. As the villains panicked about the water being removed, Tsuyu took the opportunity to leap to safety, with Toru and Shinsu in tow. At the entrance, the lights above the door started flaring, stunning the warp villain for a few seconds. It bought Tenya the precious seconds he needed in order to open the door and bolt. When the villain disappeared, his peers took the opportunity to pull 13 and themselves outside, giving each other impromptu medical attention. Some classmates, as soon as they escaped their zones, ran for the exit and joined their peers. Some went to the plaza, ready to help their teachers if need be. Kigo grinned, pinning down another villain with his feathers. He spun around, hitting a villain in the nose with his elbow and launching him into the dude behind him. He ducked, feeling the capture weapon whip over his head as it smacked someone else in the face. He and Aizawa fought well together. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the villain covered with hands scratching his neck. All Might was supposed to be here. Kigo kicked another villain towards Aizawa, who wrapped him up and smacked him into a different villain. How were you expecting to defeat All Might with a crowd of D-listers? Handyman growled, scratching his neck again. Numu, kill the bird. Time felt like a split second, before he was dodging the punch of the hulking villain, who up to this point had been standing next to Handyman's side like a lifeless doll. When he looked down, he saw that the villain had left a crater. He was very glad that he wasn't standing there. The Numu was built for the sole purpose of killing All Might. So the villain was blindingly fast and also ridiculously strong. He didn't like to resort to maiming, but he also didn't like the idea of being maimed himself, especially since the thing seems to be only punching. Kigo flew up, pulling out a few of his feathers for blades. He tucked in his wings for a dive bomb, using his speed and momentum to slice the Numu's arm clean off. To his horror, the arm starts regenerating. That's the power of Numu. Handyman shouted, from where he was standing, out of the corner of his eye, he saw the woman fighting Aizawa. Both shock absorption and super regeneration. Shock absorption implies that there's a limit. Unfortunately, Kigo is a speed hero and not a strength hero, and that means that he can't get there without getting up to ridiculous speeds. Which he does not have the time for right now. It has to have weak points though. And the number one weak point sticking out to him were the eyes on top of the exposed brain. Switching gears, he leapt up into the air to avoid another punch. Swerving through the air, he flew above the Numu, plunging the feather blades into its eyes. It shrieked, dislodging him and sending him backwards. Spreading his wings out, he watched it try and pull the blades out of its eyes, but it ended up just flailing, lodging the blades in deeper. Suring, help the Numu. I'll take care of Eraserhead. Faster than a blink, the woman jumped up, vaulting over the Numu's head. She used two arms to pull the feather blades out of the Numu's head and towards her palms, while she used the other two to summon two crescent-shaped blades, launching them at him. Kigo used two of his feathers to deflect the blades. She launched herself at him, and in the blink of an eye, she was in front of him, one palm towards his chest. He felt his heart move in his chest. Before he got the chance to move, she was gone. The Numu, blood still dripping from its quickly repairing eyes, was about to punch him. It's not well known, but due to having an avian quirk, Kigo's body had to adapt to fly. His bones were hollow, which meant that his body was light enough to fly, but his bones were very easy to break. He could feel his ribs break, digging into his lungs. Blood filled them as he was launched backwards. He hit a tree, slumping over and coughing up blood. He stayed slumped, giving off the illusion of unconsciousness while he subtly sent his feathers out. He heard small footsteps running up behind him, and internally cursed. Get out of here, kid. Numu, kill Eraserhead. He looked up, using a feather to yank Aizawa right out of the way of a Numu punch. Surenku summoned 4 more crescent blades, launching them at him, which he deflected with his feathers. She ran at him, and in a blink. Warp refraction, flashbang. Kigo squinted as a bright flash lit the area, stunning the woman. He could hear Hagakure land next to him as he stood up, using the opportunity to send a couple of feathers out. They hooked on Surenku's kimono, yanking her backwards, towards the fountain. Kid, get out of here, he said, stepping in front of her and instinctively shielding her with his wings. He didn't notice how they puffed up, how long repressed instincts were coming up in the form of heightened emotions and protectiveness. Sensei, you're hurt? Please let me help dash. I said get out of here. Crack. Aizawa was down on the ground, a crater around his head. His elbow was bleeding, dust around the edges of skin, and underneath the goggles blood was pooling in the crater. The Numu roared. It was just him. Kigo hooked a feather on the back of Hagakure's belt, yanking her out of the way as he dodged another punch from the Numu. He flew up, swerving mid-air because the Numu jumped and apparently had mad ups. When it landed, there was a bigger crater than there was before, which gave him an idea. Unfortunately, before he could act on it, he was dodging both a jumping punching Numu and crescent blades going for his head. He flinched as one sliced through his shin, just barely managing to dodge the Numu. Then, three things happened all at the same time. The door to the USJ slammed open. Handy Villain had lunged for Hagakure, touching her face with 5 fingers. Hands still on her face, he turned to say something to Aizawa, who was using his quirk. Kigo tunnel visioned, focusing only on the Handy Villain. Tucking in his wings, he dropped, dodging 2 crescent blades above his head. Picking up one of his feather blades as he dove, he got there just in time to cut off his fingertips. The villain howled, clutching his wrist as he stumbled backwards. I noticed your quirk required 5 fingers, Kigo spat out blood, standing in front of Hagakure. Wonder how you'll use it without them. Unfortunately, the Numu was charging both of them. With a gust of wind and the blink of an eye, he was near the tree line, away from the crater in the ground which would have crushed his chest. He was being held bridal style by Yagi in his All Might form, with Hagakure clinging to one arm. The sudden movement was not great for his lungs, as he coughed up blood when Yagi gingerly set him down. It pissed him off how Yagi treated him so gently, like he was bound to break at any moment. But then again, he couldn't entirely blame the guy, he was sure he looked like shit. Coughing up blood, missing several feathers in his wings, and a bleeding gash in his leg. Mainly, he wanted an excuse to continue being angry at Yagi, because he didn't want to admit that the guy was growing on him. The big villain has some sort of shock absorption quirk and super regeneration, Kigo said, wiping the blood from his mouth. I can handle the other 2. Will you be alright, young Takamai? He grinned, summoning his feathers back to his wings. I'll be fine. Focus on the big guy, big guy. Toru hid behind a tree, completely invisible and feeling helpless. Hawks had flown off to fight the kimono woman again, and they were both out of sight. The misty villain who initially scattered everyone was standing right next to the villain covered in hands. She learned his name was Shigaraki. And All Might was currently fighting the Numu. She watched as Suring reappeared next to Shigaraki, the edges of her kimono stained in blood and frost. Her heart leapt to her throat as All Might suplexed the Numu, with a portal wrapping around All Might's midsection. Her eyes barely registered a red blur as Hawks tackled the misty villain, causing the portal to dissipate. 2 red blurs followed him, feathers cutting off the tops of Suringu's horns and Shigaraki's other hand. She shivered as the ground froze over, with Todoroki standing at the edge of the plaza. Damn it kid, I told you to get out of here. All Might laughed boisterously, starting to pummel the Numu. You said that he has shock absorption, which means that there's a limit. I must surpass that limit. Toru watched as her teacher and her classmate fought the 3 villains, as All Might pummeled the Numu, and her stomach dropped. They were risking everything, and she was hiding behind a tree. Fed up, a feather dragged Todoroki to where she was standing, and their eyes met. Give me a boost, she said, starting to run. He nodded, and used his ice to launch her into the air. As she flew, she angled herself so that her back was to the sun. Putting her hands on her chest, she willed her body to focus, like a magnifying glass. Warp refraction, laser. The laser pierced the Numu's chest, causing it to howl. With a few last punches, All Might sent the Numu flying through the domed roof of the USJ. As Tora fell, she felt feathers cushion her fall, slowing her down so she was gently set on her feet. Still clutching her chest, she watched them fly back to Hawks, who was now standing next to All Might. Tamura, the misty villain said, standing next to Shigaraki, who was still clutching his stump arm. The Numu is out of commission. We must leave. No. All Might is weak, we can still dash. 2 gunshots rang out in succession, piercing both of Shigaraki's legs. The misty villain swallowed the 3 of them up, and they disappeared, as if they were never there to begin with. Her legs shook as she hugged herself. She watched as a cement wall was put up in front of them, watched Present Mike run to the battered body of Aizawa-sensei on the ground, watched as Hawks passed out and fell into All Might's arms. This didn't feel like a victory. Kana ran through the short hallway, Netsu perched on her shoulder. Her arm was still transformed into a rifle, and her mind kept flashing through worst-case scenarios. She saw the French kid, Aoyama Aoyama, if she remembered correctly, standing guard in front of the door. "Kid. Have you seen any villains?" He shook his head. "None, madam. I don't think they expected anyone to be here." He stepped aside, letting them enter the room. It was dark, lit up only by the screens connected to various cameras. She could see a laptop shut on the console, decorated in stickers of various heroes. A figure was barely recognizable, only his green hair illuminated by the monitors, slumped onto the console with his head in his arms. The only thing that could be heard were heart-wrenching sobs. Chapter 30, Is It True? Hawks had to have extensive surgery in order to fix the valves in his heart, realign his ribs and heal his lungs. Recovery Girl and our doctors did as much as they could, but he'll have heart problems in the future, and his lungs will be weaker. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. He's lucky he's still alive. Izuku poured through security footage, downing his coffee as he did so. He knew his eye bags rivaled Izua's at this point, but he needs to be working. The nurses have all begged him to take a break and get some sleep, but the one time he tried, he woke up in a cold sweat 20 minutes later. He'd rather be productive than tormented by nightmares. All the heroes were in individual rooms. He knew that 13's partner was at their bedside, and Yamato was sitting with Izuwa. He was sitting as close to Kigo's bed as physically possible, reassured that he could hear the steady rhythm of the heartbeat monitor. He's already dug through the police reports of the incident. He logged in with Tsukachi's account, but in his defense the detective should have changed his password by now. The Numu was created from a corpse, stuffed with multiple quirks. The work of All for One, who is supposed to be dead. He's spent the entire night digging through previous incident reports, the Quirk database, open and closed investigations. He's gone through the security footage 5 times now, writing down everything he can about the villain's fighting styles, strengths, and weaknesses. He's aware that he's repressing his emotions in favor of being productive, but even though Hound Dog has told him that's a bad thing, he shoves it into a box anyways. Emotions would just blind him and make him illogical. He needed to keep a cool head. His mind was his only weapon, he would be useless without it. Given the paranoid state he's in and the lack of sleep, his entire system goes on high alert when there's a knock on the door. Who is it? It's just me and Detective Tsukachi, my boy. He glared at the door. Tsukachi was the last person he wanted to see, but he probably needed to come in and take his statement. Fine. Yagi sheepishly shuffled in, with Tsukachi coming in behind him. Yagi took a seat across from them, while Tsukachi made his way over to Izuku. Before the detective could get a word out though, Izuku glared at him, gritting out, "When were you going to tell me?" Excuse me?" He spun around his laptop on his lap, showing the detective the investigation into the disappearance of his mom's body. "When were you going to tell me?" The detective started to pale. "It's not what you dash. Not what I think." "What, that you hid the fact that villains stole my mom's body out of the hospital's morgue? Or that you have known they've stolen her body for 10 months now? Because this is what it looks like to me. Midoriya, please, when the investigation opened you had just attempted suicide dash. Did I fucking stutter? 10 months. You've known my mental state has improved now for 10 months. You couldn't have given me some fucking warning that my mom's body was missing and could show up as a villain in the last 10 months. Izuku was shouting by now, standing up and clutching his laptop to his chest. "Get out. Midoriya, you know I have to take your statement dash. You have the security footage, you don't need my statement. Get out. My boy, please try to see it from his point of view dash." Izuku spun towards Yagi, fixing him with the nastiest glare he could manage. "If you're going to take his side, you get out too." The door was practically kicked down, revealing a very pissed Rumi and Auntie Kana. "Alright, both of you get the fuck out before I make you." In the first smart decision of the day, Yagi and Tsukachi quickly left, the former with a pitying look and the latter with a small bow. Rumi and Auntie Kana quickly ran into the room. Rumi, who was wearing an uncharacteristically large coat, stood by Kigo's bedside and looked him over, while Auntie Kana ran straight for Izuku and pulled him into a hug. "It's okay, Zuku, let it out." He hadn't realized when he started crying, but he found himself melting into the hug, sobbing into the hero's shoulder. He felt himself being rocked back and forth, and he could feel Rumi comfortingly rubbing her hand on his back. Eventually, he pulled back, still sniffling but not sobbing anymore. "Thanks," was all he could muster. Don't worry about it, Squirt, Rumi said, ruffling his hair. We're family. Auntie Kana nodded. We're here for both of you. He nodded, rubbing his eyes with his free hand. Auntie Kana deftly pulled his laptop from his other arm, setting it down on the table. Now, no more working. But I dash. Kigo wouldn't want you to overwork yourself. He sighed, nodding as he let himself be pulled along by the two. He was now sandwiched in his seat between the two, with Rumi next to Kigo's bedside and Auntie Kana next to the table by the window. He didn't complain when Auntie Kana pulled him into a side hug, accepting the comfort it brought him. Besides, Rumi said, as something moved under her coat. Someone missed you. His eyes lit up, as a meow came from inside her coat. Susie's head popped out of the collar, and she wiggled even more when she caught sight of him. Rumi gently pulled her out, handing her to Izuku carefully. He pulled the cat to his chest, nuzzling her as she purred, causing her entire chest to vibrate. Okay, so I admit now that smuggling the cat in was a good idea, Auntie Kana said next to him. But it was still a stupid one and I don't know how you got away with it. Rumi shrugged, moving over to join the little cuddle pile now that she didn't have a smuggled cat in her coat. Hey, giant coat is a classic for a reason. He chuckled, pressing his face to Susie's fur as she purred. The situation was still pretty bleak, but surrounded by family, with an older sister who smuggled in a cat to cheer him up and an auntie who loved him, he admitted that it was a little brighter than before. Chapter 31, It's True. Being at Shiketsu may have been the best thing that's ever happened to Katsuki. Oh sure, he hated it at first. He hadn't wanted to settle for anything less than his idol's alma mater, but he also realized that he was extremely lucky to be attending a hero school at all, and not in juvie. Due to being under investigation, and then eventually being shut down, he was quickly pulled from Aldera and schooled online. Which he hated, especially because his parents didn't want him leaving the house at all at first, fearing him becoming victim to another villain attack. Thankfully his shrink convinced them to let him go out and train, but that had been a struggle. It had been enough of a fight to get the old hag to attend her own shrink. He had gotten the idea to clean up the beach on one of his morning jogs. Dogaba Beach had been a dump, and there were mounds of trash. It would be good training, an excuse to get out of the house away from the old hag, and a way to add some community service hours to his resume. While no hero school required community service hours, he figured he needed something to stand out among the sea of nerds, especially with his probation. It was not because the beach used to be Auntie Inko and the nerds' favorite, that was just a coincidence. With the thumbs up from the head detective, Katsuki managed to get into Shiketsu with 1,500 community service hours. Shiketsu had dorms for its students, so his parents helped him move in, with a promise to call every weekend and visit every break. Mainly to make sure their son didn't keel over but also to remind him to keep up his video calls with the shrink. Anyways, the week at the dorms before class had started was the best it's ever been for Katsuki. He's away from the old hag, which means he can relax a little. The shrink had explained to him that he had constantly been in survival mode, and now that he's away from his mother, he wasn't being worried about being spontaneously yelled at anymore, and there were a few extras who were maybe becoming friends. They lived in his dorm building and stuck by his side, determined to get to know him despite how prickly he is. He may not be an asshole anymore, but he was here to learn to be a hero, and he didn't need friends for that. Despite that, shitty hair and knife fucker decided that he was going to be their friend, especially since they were all in the same class. It wasn't working, damn it. Katsuki groaned, flopping back on his bed and rubbing his wrists. He was pretty ahead academically and physically, but that did not help him with all the note-taking he had to do. Or the cooking, because none of the extras in the building could make something better than microwave dinner, so he had to step up to make sure none of them starved. He just wanted to go to bed, but just when he thought he would be able to, his phone rang from his desk. With another groan, he grabbed it, squinting when he saw the number. It was only Thursday. Why the fuck was the old hag calling him? What the fuck? Cats? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, why the fuck wouldn't I be? U.A was attacked by villains. Well, shit. Maybe he should have been paying attention to what the extras were talking about after school. He told them that he needed to charge his hearing aids, but he really didn't want to hear another argument about whether Pokemon or Digimon was better. Cats, you should come back home, it'll be safer. Oh hell no. He just managed to get away from the old hag, he did not need to go back. But he also couldn't just say that to her face. Yeah, come back home and have to take a plane to school every morning, which is a very easy place for a villain to attack. We could find a different school, one that's closer, or you could go back to online school dash. I'll be fine, Katsuki cut her off. Our dorm building is literally right next to the teachers' dorms. Alright, brat. Stay safe, yeah here. Course I will. I can't be number one if I get hurt. With that phone call finally over, he tossed his phone back onto the desk, rolling over and burying his face into his pillow. Hopefully he could get some sleep. His door was thrown open, the two extras running into the room with pillows and blankets. Surprise sleepover. Shitty hair shouted. And there went that hope. Ow 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 Kigo my ribs dash. Despite being in a hospital and also severely injured, this didn't stop Kigo from pulling Izuku into a bone-crushing hug. I think you're gonna suffocate him, K, Rumi said, with Susie still perched on her shoulder. Auntie Kana had left a while ago to go talk to Netsu, leaving the four of them in the room. There had been a couple of tense moments when a doctor or nurse came in and they had to hurriedly put Susie back under Rumi's coat. Kigo finally let him go, kinda. Izuku was still being hugged, but now he could breathe again, which was nice. You brought her? Kigo asked, finally spotting Susie. And she isn't on the bed with me? I thought we were friends, Rumi. When I put her on the bed, she tried to step on your chest, bird brain, Rumi huffed, leaning over and flicking him on the forehead. Interrupting them was a knock on the door. In a flurry of chaos, Rumi snatched Susie up and beelined for the bathroom, leaving it slightly ajar behind her so she could eavesdrop. Izuku himself quickly dove under the chairs, hiding behind his bag and the blanket draped over him. He heard the door opening, and someone wearing high heels walked into the room. Hawks. The woman said, stopping right next to where Izuku was hidden. We are disappointed in you. Gee, it isn't nice to belittle a man in a hospital bed. Clearly we've been giving you too much freedom. What have you been telling Netsu? Excuse me. Do you think we're stupid? You start working at U.A, and then the analyst you're supposed to be investigating releases an anonymous report backed by Netsu slandering the commission. Now we have to scramble to get a scapegoat for the public while you play teacher dash. I'm not playing anything, Kigo spat back. I nearly died protecting those kids. The lady huffed, rapping her knuckles on the edge of the bed. You're aware of what happens to those who disappoint the commission, Hawks. I'm also aware that the last time that threat was made, they died. Since you don't seem incentivized by your own life, what about Dekuru's? He heard Kigo rustling his feathers. We know you're lying about him. Let's see, Midoriya Izuku, quirkless orphan, was attending online school before attending U.A support course, 15 years old with an unfortunate record of getting into fights and suicidal behavior. We both know how easy it is for the quirkless to die these days dash. Don't you dare lay a finger on him. Well, that seems like an incentive. She chuckled, as if amused by threatening a kid's life for blackmail purposes. Now, let's talk about what you'll be doing for us dash. This time there wasn't even a knock on the door. It was flung open dramatically, with someone walking in and slow clapping. Congratulations Kisu-chan, on your free trip to prison. Netsu said cheerfully. I'm sorry what? I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it is hospital policy to have security cameras in every room, Auntie Kana said. So thank you for your confession. Although, if you come with me and Netsu, this time it was Detective Naomasa speaking, then you might be able to get a lighter sentence if you provide information about your colleagues' crimes. Izuku heard two sets of footsteps leaving, and then Auntie Kana said, you two can come out now. How did you know? Rumi asked, slipping out of the bathroom at the same time Izuku crawled from under the chairs. His bag was still here and your ear was literally peeking out of the bathroom. I am not that bad. You totally are, I could see your ear, Kigo said lightheartedly. Izuku could tell that he was still tense though. He sat on the edge of the bed, scooting over and pulling his ridiculous brother into a hug. Everything will work out fine. He felt a wing wrap around him, pulling him closer while Kigo hugged him back. I know, fledgling, I know. You won't be able to reach the top speeds or fly at altitudes as high as you used to be able. Your heart and lungs wouldn't be able to handle it anymore. I'm sorry, Hawks. Tatsumi had finally taken Izuku back home, so that he could sleep in his bed rather than shitty hospital chairs. She took Susie with her, leaving him with just Rumi for company. I don't regret it, Rumi, Kigo said, continuing to bury himself in blankets. But I want to be able to fly again. That was the only thing I could do that connected me back to my family. Well, maybe you could do other bird stuff now. Rumi said, continuing to chew on a large bag of carrots she brought from the local Walmart. Try chirping. Kigo gave her an offended look. You can't just ask a man to chirp. With a grin, she pulled out her phone and opened up the photo gallery. We'll see, Kigo. Somewhat warily, he leaned over anyways, peeking over her shoulder as she scrolled through it. There are plenty of pictures of Susie and Izuku cuddled together. He recognized them because he sent them to her, pictures of random stray cats she found on patrol, and selfies of her in front of whatever villain she had beaten. And then there was a shaky picture, as if whoever had taken it was laughing, of Kigo glaring at all might at U.A's orientation. Quirk 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 dash. Kigo's eyes widened as he covered his mouth with his hands. Rumi's grin turned mischievous. Oh? What was that, Kigo? Nothing. On her phone, she pulled up an article about the meaning of various red-tailed hawk calls. Well, look at that. Was that a mating call, Kigo? No. I am not interested in that oaf. Don't lie to me, Birdbrain. I'm not lying, I'm not interested in him. Musudifo Central Broadcasting at Official. A whistleblower has revealed that even the current Hero Public Safety Commission president was deep in corruption. Read the full article here. Musudifo Central Broadcasting at Official. Did you know that Hawk's legal name is actually Hawks? Read the full article here. Musudifo Central Broadcasting at Official. After the arrest of former Hero Public Safety Commission President Yosatsuki Himitsu, Netsu endorses a candidate for the new president, Azui Fukazaku. Read the full article here. Musudifo Central Broadcasting at Official. After 2 weeks of investigation, the previous director of Musudifo General Hospital has been arrested for Quirk discrimination, criminal negligence, tampering with evidence, and billing and insurance fraud. Read the full article here. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.